Welcome to a special edition of Dads and Daughters, a Monday Night Edition, Season 2, Episode 9. With Jenna here, usually we have Lovey and the Babushka. Lovey just had her senior pictures earlier and has had a rough day. We've all had those rough days mentally. Sometimes we have those awful days, right, Jenna? But thankfully, we have Jenna here to fill in. And actually, the topic of tonight is around mental health awareness. And I want to talk a little bit about some of our guests tonight, but I also want to plug doing a special fundraiser next month with Irish Mickey Ward. I'll be doing a punch-a-thon up in Lowell, Massachusetts. So you'll see some exciting footage next month, raising money for Team Mickey Ward charities as he's helping me prepare for a 3-round exhibition with Jerry Cooney. Who do you think is going to win, Jenna?
What?
Who's going to win the fight between Daddy and Jerry Cooney?
Not you.
Not me. Well, we got to work on that. But so I've often shared my own struggles. By the way, I got to plug Giant Damon drink A-Game drink launched this week. Excited about that. So thanks for sponsoring the show. I've often shared my own struggles with my girls about some of the injuries I had playing professional sports and college and dependencies that I've had with alcohol, painkillers, steroids. Different times in my younger years, I've had ACL surgery, broken wrist. I got the metal plate here, shoulder, wrist, ankle, you name it. I'm probably the bionic guy by this point. But so, painkiller dependency and things that happen after our life, after college and professional sports becomes an issue in terms of transition. So I want to introduce two of my heroes on and off the gridiron that have had really great stories. Randy Grimes and Eric Hipple to our show. And Randy and his beautiful wife, Lydia, originally launched a great group called Pro Athletes in Recovery, which helps other professional athletes find addiction treatment and recovery resources. He was a Hall of Fame football player with Baylor University and an NFL center for the Buccaneers, 1983 to 92. Successful career with 10 years, and he used his prescription pills and opioids to treat career-related injuries over the course of 20 years. But through his recovery from addiction, he's worked in the treatment industry for over 9 years, and he's now a regular keynote speaker at a lot of conferences and events, and he's very involved in interventions and training other professional athletes with obviously Pro Athletes in Recovery and manages their day-to-day operations. Now, Eric Hipple, he was a successful quarterback in the NFL for the Detroit Lions from 1981 to 1989. You might have seen him on a lot of those Thanksgiving Day games where we were all sitting there during the Lions and the Cowboys. But since his 15-year-old son, Jeff, his suicide many years ago, Eric has devoted his life to building awareness and breaking down the stigma surrounding depressive illnesses. So he's received an honorary doctorate for his work in mental health from his alma mater while giving their commencement speech in 2019 class to Utah State University. He was a Lions Salute to Service Award winner last year. Eric personally helped me with my PTSD and depression issues I had a few years back after Las Vegas. I met Eric through Rand Sherrill, a world-class international soccer player who had a severe brain injury. Eric and Randy are both great guys. I met them through Gridiron Greats, through Coach Ditka's charity. We'll talk a little bit about that, but want to welcome them to the show.
Hey, Mike. Hey, thank you. Nice to see you.
We're looking good. Randy's got the colorful shirt. I need colorful shirt like that, but it's all good. So,
he's also got the tan face. Look at that face, man.
Well, he's in Florida. He's in Florida. Eric, you're a Detroit guy.
Tan fat looks better than white fat, right, guys? You can't tone.
Yeah, but I think, Mike, you got us both on body shape right now. You're in shape.
That's all good. No, it's all good. But Randy, I want to show the viewers real quickly your story just to give a little more color on it. So I think we have a video that kind of articulates your story. So let's see if we can play that first.
Professional football. This is the brutal violence that can give an athlete everything and can cost almost everything. This is the game that for 23 years defined Randy Grimes, and the game that almost killed him. Randy Grimes was a college All-American and a 10-year veteran of the NFL. Through documented concussions, 6 knee surgeries, joint replacement, shoulder and tricep surgeries, and countless broken and fractured bones, the warrior in Randy trudged forward, suffering in silence.
You know, I was desperate to stay out on that field and not let injuries put me in the training room or sideline me and give somebody else an opportunity to get my position.
The excitement never stopped, and neither did the pain. The collisions on the football field can have a devastating effect on the body. Players can easily justify taking a handful of pain pills to stay in the game, to stay on the practice field, to stay out of the doctor's office, to keep from being replaced. Call it survival. Call it warrior mentality. Call it desperation. Call it anything but what it really is: addiction.
The injuries were getting worse and the addiction was getting worse. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop taking the pain medication on my own.
Randy took that suffer in silence mentality and those injuries with him when he left the game. And over the next 20-plus years, continued to justify taking the handfuls of pills daily.
When I left the game, when I took that addiction into my retired life, when I didn't have the enablers around me or the ways to justify it, then that's when it really spiraled out of control.
I began to see, his personality changing, the way he dealt with things. Of course, money was missing. He lost his job. We lost our home. Everything started just spiraling out of control.
I can't tell you how many things I had to lose, how many relationships, how many homes, how many jobs, and I still couldn't stop. As bad as my life was getting, I knew why. I just couldn't stop doing it.
Wow. Well, Randy, we've heard part 1 of your story. It's obviously a part 2, which is the comeback. But by the way, Buccaneers, Tom Brady sequel, pumped up. Of the Buccaneers. I wasn't even good enough to make the 1995 version of the Buccaneers when they had Sam Weiss as a coach, and I couldn't even make that team. But you played 10 years. But got to say, we've heard part 1 of your story. Talk to us about hitting rock bottom. I think it was September 22nd, 2009 when you faced the withdrawal, which was really the biggest part of your rock bottom period. And how you found what you lost, but how you found the resilience to pick yourself back up, and through the help of your wife and your helpers. You had a lot of helpers and support system over the years that got you there. So talk a little bit about that first. And
it's almost like every rock bottom I hit had a trap door in it, always went deeper every rock bottom. And it seems like the perfect storm was starting to happen in that spring and summer of 2009. I lost a good friend that I played next to for many years in Tampa named Tom McHale. And, he was out there doing the exact same thing I was doing. That was, self-medicating the injuries that he got while he played for the Bucs. And, that really got my attention. And my daughter wouldn't let me come around my first grandchild. My addiction had gotten so bad that I wasn't fit to be around my first grandkid. And also I was having a series of seizures about every other day as a result of withdrawal from benzodiazepines. And seizures driving in vehicles, and only by the grace of God did I not hurt somebody else. So, my wife was willing to make one more phone call for me. She realized she was loving me to death and she couldn't do it anymore, but she was willing to make one more phone call for me. And I can remember in the end, at the end of all of this, in that spring and summer of 2009, I can remember laying on the floor of a vacant house. I'd lost another house to addiction in foreclosure. And, we got the house cleared out. We got the utilities turned out. And then I lived there for another few months. And I can remember laying in the floor of that house thinking, I was a college All-American. I married my sweetheart cheerleader dream wife. I've got 2 great kids. I was a second-round draft pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was a 1988 NFL Man of the Year. I was a Pro Bowler, and here I am sleeping on the floor of a vacant house with no utilities. That's where my addiction took me, and that's what it took to finally get past the guilt, the shame, and the pride and the ego that kept me from raising my hand or thinking that I could control this thing. And that's when I finally asked for help. And she reached out to an organization who knew somebody. And that's how I got on an airplane that night, September 22nd of 2009. That's when this whole next journey started.
Well, there's such a stigma, with mental health illness. And, I know myself as well, when I needed to get help myself, it was an embarrassing thing, honestly, to share with anybody, because it's just over the years, being a man, athletes, we don't want to talk about that. But Eric, your story is incredible in its own right. Obviously, being a successful quarterback with the Lions in the 80s and watching you as a kid during those Thanksgiving Day games and everything. And but let's talk. I want to show a video of your story, Eric, because I think you had your own kind of parallel path of what I call self-destructive behavior, which culminated in your own personal loss of your son. But I want to play that video to show like how where you were and where you are now. So let's see if we have that video to share.
Quarterback is open about his own battle with depression and the drugs and alcohol he abused in an effort to self-medicate the pain following the suicide of his 15-year-old son Jeff in April of 2000. Hipple hit rock bottom when he was arrested for suspicion of driving under the influence in 2003.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to make it through it, to be honest with you. There's times when it was tough and a lot of self-medicating, trying to struggle through that.
After finding clarity and purpose, Hipple's first military outreach began when he served as the keynote speaker at the 2009 Department of Defense Suicide Prevention Conference in San Antonio. Since then, his work has focused on improving the mental fitness of active military and veterans to help improve their quality of life.
When we leave our sport and they leave the military, there's a lot of transitional issues there. Stuff like, identity, the loss, the support systems also kind of go away. And there's that moment of, kind of greenness of like, what do I do now?
In a remarkable twist of fate, Hipple has gone from throwing touchdown passes to preaching hope, something he feels equal parts compelled and humbled to do.
Eric, incredible story, and obviously you helped me during my time of need as well, and that's what you do is really give back, and that's why you got the Lions Salute to Service Award last year. But mental health illness obviously can take hold of one's thoughts and processes, lead to a pattern of self-destructive behavior. Talk about your own behavior, which kind of drove you to the brink of where you felt there was no hope. But how did you get back? Kind of similar to what Randy did in terms of, was it your support system, or what was it in you that helped you to kind of take that next step?
Well, actually, the transition of when you leave the game, and by the way, Randy is such an incredible person to do what he did for so many years at that position, which is really the position that controls the game as a center, and to do it so toughly and so smartly, and yet still end up where he was, but finally got the help. My hat goes off to him every time. He's an incredible human being. But so for myself, that transition was a tough one, leaving the game. All your support systems, your identity, all that stuff is all, is all there, and then it's just ripped away and it's gone. And so I struggled. I was starting a business; it was doing well, but I struggled before I lost my son, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I wasn't unable to see what was happening with him. But certainly, after he took his life, he was age 15. He had about every symptom that was there, and that self-medication, I just didn't want to live. But I knew I couldn't take my life because of how it makes other people feel. I know that now, and so I couldn't do that. And so I just tried to stay as numb as I could with whatever I could get my hands on. And I guess my low point for Randy was, in that house, and for me, it was, looking through the bars of a jail and saying, I don't want this. What can I do? And so when I got out, I started looking for answers, and I ended up at the University of Michigan Depression Center, which was a place I actually went for a lunch and learn, but I ended up getting treatment there. But more than anything, this whole idea and the stigma around it, around mental health, we don't talk about it because of the stigma. But how do you know what's going on if you don't talk about it? And that was the biggest eye opener for me, was all of a sudden realizing there's a name to it. There's symptoms. There's a chemistry behind it, and all that stuff. And says, oh my gosh, that's me. That's what I have. And not only that, that's what my son had. And so, striving to break free of that, I got treatment. Started reaching out. Started looking. What can I do to make a change? How can I help other people? Because I can't be the only one in this. And that's how you feel. You feel alone. You feel like you're the only one going through something. And to find out that I'm not alone and there's others going through it, I wanted to give back and see if I couldn't reach out and help others and help defeat the stigma, but also find better ways and easier pathways to treatment.
Well, you also help veterans too. I think that's something I was talking to David Wells, former Tigers pitcher, as well as Yankees pitcher, a lot of other teams. But David has his own organization, Perfect 33 Foundation, helping veterans in the transition from civilian life and some of the struggles they have. I know, Eric, you dedicated your life to that. But I want to talk for a minute about Coach Mike Ditka. He's the guy that brought all three of us together. And I've been fortunate to know you've known Coach a lot longer than me, but I've known him for a good 10 plus years. And Gridiron Greats, Shannon McGrath Jordan and Karen Wright, and all the great work they do. And after the Impact Fund and all the great stuff. And Coach Ditka has been dedicated to helping retired players with traumatic brain injuries and just some of the mental health issues as well. So talk a little bit about what Coach Ditka has meant to you guys and how we all kind of came here together, because I think that's an important part of the story.
Well, it's almost like it took somebody like Coach Ditka to bring the awareness to the public of what was going on. And even Eric has helped me in a lot of ways. Eric helped me understand I think he's helped a lot of people understand the transition that athletes go through when they leave the game. I remember when Sam Wise put his hand on my shoulder and told me that my services wouldn't be needed anymore, and I just raked everything out of my locker into a black trash bag and walked out the back door. And Randy Grimes, the football player, didn't exist anymore. And, it was that fueled, that was pouring gasoline on an already raging fire, which was my addiction. So, it was a long time. It was not until I got into treatment that I finally grieved the death of that career, of that person. I allowed football to become who I was instead of just something I was good at. So, Eric helped me understand that transition had a huge part of that. And, it wasn't until I started really peeling back the layers of the onion did I realize that. And now that's a big part of what I talk about. Transitional trauma is huge. And we can trace trauma back to the beginning of pretty much all addiction. And this had a huge part in my self-esteem, my identity, and everything. And it wasn't until I finally let that go and reinvented myself. Like Eric said, I reinvented myself and rediscovered a new passion that I was finally able to move on to. And Coach Ditka's had a lot to do with that. He's brought awareness to it with not only the concussions, but he's with addiction. And he's been the greatest player advocate that we could ever ask for.
Well, I laugh about Eric because he was one of your rivals, Bears, Lions, big rivalry. He hated you when you were playing, but talk about how much, Eric, that he's meant to you since you've hung up the cleats.
Well, I've got so much respect for Coach Ditka, and first of all, because of we faced him twice a year, and he was the defense they had put together, the team that they had, and just he was ruthless, he was tough when he played, he was tough as a coach, so there's this measure of toughness, and yet he was able to recognize the guys were hurting, and the guys were suffering, guys were having a hard time. And he felt like the NFL wasn't doing enough at the time, and so he put his, he put himself into it, in the trenches, and said, "I'm going to help these guys out." And so started raising funds, started reaching out, trying putting money together. Gridiron Greats was all about, as far as helping guys who are struggling. A Dire Needs Fund, and then we worked with them on after the impact, as we started trying to raise funds to help guys through treatment. Not just dire needs, but also through treatment, through other things. And one of the areas we focused on really heavily was that transition piece. It sounds like, well, you played a great game and okay, it's over now, so that should be easy to go. But, most of these guys have been playing since they were 9 years old, right? And so their identity is really wrapped up in that. And when all of a sudden that's gone, you got to go through a measure of a huge loss and grief on who am I, and that's kind of hard to find. And that loss and grief can lead you to the tools that you've already been using to help with pain, to help with avoidance and stuff like that. All of a sudden, it becomes front and center. And so, addiction is one of the things that can develop from that because you're using the tools that you had. And so Ditka meant a lot for leading the way, really, and it actually forced the NFL to take change and to redirect, and also look at that transitional piece and helping guys out as well.
He's dedicated his life to it. And Randy, how much of your recovery was due when you started Pro Athletes in Recovery was more due to your faith as well? I think that played a big role, because obviously to pull yourself back up, I think I don't want to get spiritual, but you got to have faith in yourself, and obviously a religious spiritual being to be able to do that when you hit rock bottom and you have nothing else to. And I know I felt like that after September 11th, and I've had moments in my life where I felt like everything is there's no bright side, and got to find that divine inspiration. What was it for you?
Well, and it was always there, and that was part of the reason that there was so much guilt and shame in that respect. That I had let not only my family down, but I had let God down. And He blessed me with so much talent and the ability to be in the right place at the right time, around the right people, doing the right thing, football related. And this addiction that I had when I played for the Bucs progressed to the point to where the last 2 years of my career I was playing in complete blackouts. Making all the line calls, getting guys going in the right direction, changing blocking schemes, doing all of this in a blackout. And I always played good, and that kept people from asking me, "Randy, why are you slurring your words? Why are you late to practice every day? Why are you nodding off in meetings?" Nobody ever asked me those questions because I was always playing good. But, back to your question, my faith was a big part of my family's recovery, my recovery. And had I not had that, I'm not sure the outcome would have been the same.
Yeah, I can relate to concussions. I know that I have that hard Irish head, and some of those you don't think about when you're playing football, but then years later you have the effects of it. When we hit 40 years old and beyond, we start feeling those headaches. And I know I needed relief, and I started to do what a lot of you guys have done with the pills and other things to just get that temporary relief. And it's it's an addiction that's so widespread that I think you can't understate how significant it is, especially with our teenagers and our young people as well, going through things like that. So that's why it's such an important topic. We did an episode on it in December with Doc Gooden, Grant Fuhrer, good friend of mine, and some others, about how easily it is for normal guys, athletes, or even people you'd never suspect that fall into that addiction. But Eric, I want to ask you, what is your message of resilience to enable athletes, veterans that have mental health awareness and eliminate the stigmas that come with depression? Because I think that's one of your messages through all the speeches you do. You have a great book that you put out as well, which I love. You're really all about having a sense of purpose, setting goals, and having meaningful relationships. And resilience, I think, is a big part of that.
Well, one of the things Randy said was family, was part of it. And it's the same here. And let's face it, family is what helped pull us through this, the support system that's there. The better the support system, the better off it is. And let's face it, I know Randy did. I know I did. I'm not sure about you, Mike, how much you put people through, but I put people through a lot of stuff. And the fact that they survived, they stayed there and hung in there and waited for me and helped me through it, made that happen. But part of the resilience is having a support system. Part of resilience is having knowledge of what the things that are happening to you so you can wait them out, so you can understand them, so you can say, this isn't the end of me. This will pass, so just give me some strength to get through. Part of resilience is hope. The fact that, this is a continuum. Mental health, or I'll say mental health, but it's a continuum. It doesn't mean that when things are going bad today and they're tough, right? Or you might even face a mental illness, but that doesn't mean that it's the end of the story. It means that there's treatment available. It also means that recovery is possible. It also means that, let's detach a diagnosis away from what mental health is and call mental health what it really should be, which is the sense of well-being on who you are. I feel good about who I am. I can have good relationships. I can, handle, normal stresses, and I can be productive and part of my community. That's what it is. It doesn't matter if I have a diagnosis or not. And so let's get to that point. That way everybody's combined and everybody's a part of it. The other thing about family and
Go ahead.
the other thing I was just gonna say, the thing about family and Mike, dad and daughters, I think is fantastic. My youngest daughter, I've got 3 daughters, and my youngest daughter, who she was in the next room when my son died. And she had a lot to overcome and ride through it. And I wasn't in the position to really help her out during the time. But she survived. She became resilient. She ended up graduating from college with honors, and she's now a therapist. And so she's a licensed master social worker, and trauma is her thing. And so I'm really proud of that daughter, and it's really cool that she's able to survive and go through that. But she was one of my biggest supporters through all this stuff. So fantastic.
Well, Kelly's not here, of course, was part of the show, and I want to let the viewers know that today she had a rough patch, and there's good days and you have bad days, and when you have the bad days, you just got to kind of deal with it. It's no stigma attached to it, and it's I think it's important for the viewers to understand that that's a common thing. I have my bad days too, where I don't want to get out of bed. I think we all have that. So I think understanding that, being aware of it, and helping to manage it, setting goals and kind of improving, and stuff happens. And Kelly's done a lot of work on advocacy with mental health awareness and inclusion, and helping special need kids like herself. And there's some days where she needs her own help. And I think that's important. I think all of us that are helpers, we need our own help sometimes. I need help sometimes. So, but I want to I know we're running short on time, but Randy, last thing about Pro Athletes in Recovery, want to talk a little bit more. Can you talk a little bit more about the organization, the website, and how people can be more of a part of that? And Eric, I want to share the great work you're doing as well. I think everybody can look at your website and see the incredible work you've done over the years as well. But I want to obviously give Randy a little piece to talk about Pro Athletes in Recovery. It's such an incredible organization.
Yeah, like I said, when I came into treatment back in September of 2009, there was no resources out there available for former NFL guys as far as substance abuse, mental health issues. So, I can remember sitting at a picnic table one day in the middle of the treatment center that I was at, and I couldn't get control of myself. I was sobbing uncontrollably because it was the first time that I had ever had to deal with the huge wake of destruction that I left back with my family, and I had to do it sober. And I can remember thinking that, if this is what being sober feels like, I don't want to have any part of it. And it was like at that very minute, I had this spiritual awakening, this burning bush moment where somebody came up behind me, not literally, but I felt weight and warmth on my shoulders. And it was like somebody draped a quilt around me. And I can remember just having this overwhelming feeling of confidence that I could do this, but then I also had to make it mean something. So that was kind of the birth of Athletes in Recovery. I knew that I wanted to do something for guys that I knew were just like me, like Eric said, because of guilt, shame, ego, whatever, pride, were not raising their hand and asking for help. And I wanted to get in front of those guys. I knew they were out there. I knew there was other Randy Grimes and Tom McHale's out there. And so Athletes in Recovery was born that day and started working with the NFL Player Care Foundation. That was brand new at the time. We started reaching out to all these guys, letting them know that there was resources available. There was financial help available if they didn't have insurance, and that there was hope and help out there. And next thing you know, Major League Baseball got involved, NBA, NHL, all these former athlete groups got involved with it. And, you know, over the last 10 years, we've been able to help hundreds and hundreds of former athletes from all sports, jockeys, you know, motorsport safety groups. It's just been it's been a huge blessing that God's given me this opportunity to stay connected to a game that I love so much. And in this way, it's almost like all those years of playing, it's only preparing me for what I do now. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. You can go on the website at proathletesinrecovery.org. You can find me on Facebook at Athletes in Recovery. Of course, on Twitter at Sober Center and Instagram, all that stuff. And if you can't find me, you're not looking hard enough, because I'm everywhere.
Yeah, you're all out there, Randy. But you guys are great, and you've helped me in any way I could ever help you guys in supporting what you're doing. We have been, being down in Tampa with you, Randy, during Super Bowl week, and Eric, we spent a lot of Super Bowl radio rows together, and I hope to see both you guys in Los Angeles next year. Keep doing the great work. How right we can support it, but I want to thank you guys for being on tonight and sharing your incredible stories.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
Keep it going, brother. Thanks.
All right, man. We'll wrap up, and we have a great show coming up in 2 weeks with the Joe Namath Foundation and some special surprise guests. So look forward to that in April 11th. But thanks, Randy, and thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Mike. See you, Randy.